Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thank you for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss the dictates of an illegitimate government. Are they legal? So friends, in the midst of everything going on in the world, the Biden administration has decided to do the standard Democrat and Marxist response to any good crisis, and that is not let it go to waste and to use it for politically advantageous exploitation of their political objectives, namely disarmament of the American people. And so I think we shouldn't be surprised that they are trying to use the tragedies that have happened in recent days to try and disarm the American people. And of course, we've seen this with everything from Beto showing his rear end and showing up at a news conference, again, to exploit a crisis or a perceived crisis. Friends, as we know, most violent crimes that are committed in the United States are not committed with rifles, and more people have been killed with hands over the past year than have been killed with rifles in the United States. So there is no crisis, to be sure, with violent crimes committed by rifles, unless you're talking about a crisis of violent crimes committed with rifles at the hands of government. Now that is very much a real thing and has been throughout the past 120 years, very much a real thing. So friends, I'm filming this video right now in Itamar in Israel, and I was thinking of a few things. Because as I was driving through the village of Hawara, which is a hotbed of terrorist activity by the Palestinian Authority, which is a classic example of what happens when you give a Marxist population democratic processes, they're going to elect a de facto terrorist and Marxist organization. And so as we were driving through Hawara to get here, I look, and then lo and behold, right next to emblems of terrorism is a sign USAID. And it occurred to me that this Biden administration, this Democrat-run organization, this Marxist organization that is in power in the federal government of the United States right now, this government is spending lots of tax dollar money arming terrorist organizations. It spent lots of tax dollar money giving incredible amounts of small arms to the Taliban and abandoning large amounts of small arms, and not small arms, big arms, to the Taliban over the past year. It sent lots of money in armaments to other countries. And yet, the Biden administration is pushing and focusing on disarming the American people. And why is that? Because when it comes right down to it, folks, there is a trend here, whether it's in Israel with the terrorist organization, the Palestinian Authority, doing its thing, or it's in the United States with weaponized armed Marxist groups with their soft facade and the federal government trying to get their objectives met. The overall goal and objective is to disarm good and law-abiding people and concentrate the amount of arms left over into the hands of governments. Governments who have, over the past 120 years, been responsible for the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. When governments have a monopoly on power, they will become despotic and tyrannical 100 times out of 100. And for that reason, our founders, particularly the anti-federalists, focused on a few things. Number one, the Bill of Rights, enshrining the rights of the American people against their government into the first 10 amendments into the Constitution. Then number two, distributing power so that it would be much more difficult for power to be consolidated into a strong central government. So when I see this organization in Washington known as the federal government, with currently the puppet Biden at the head of it, I have to ask myself, is this a legitimate government, and what constitutes a legitimate government? First off, is this government a government of the people? Because we know that good governments are by the consent of the governed. You have to ask yourself that. Is this a legitimate government? And is this government representative of the people? Is this government truly governing via the consent of the governed? Personally, I don't think so. Second, in order for it to be a legitimate government, it has to use the mechanism of government to protect individual rights. And no amount of voting via the Democratic majority can take away those rights. No amount of voting or getting a majority of people in power can use the mechanism of government to disarm or to take away life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from people. But that's exactly what this Biden administration is attempting to do by attempting to pass more gun control legislation to disarm people. I think they're submitting, or Congress is going to take up the issue, or trying to take up the issue as we sit. But it's interesting to me, taking this perspective in, because I'm here obviously for Shavuot, also known as Pentecost. So Shavuot, the biblical feast of, some people call it the Feast of Weeks, this is actually featured in the book of Ruth. And to me, what I see at this point here, Shavuot is historically the time when God's law was given, when the Torah was given. And I look at the law of God, and I look at the scriptures, and I look at the Bible. The Bible that is the foundation for the Enlightenment, the foundation for our constitutional way of thinking. The Bible, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, which have given the world the foundation for good governance and for a government that protects the rights of people, and government which ultimately has its origins in a democratic process with certain non-negotiables. That's why we have a constitutional republic and not a democracy. At the time when we celebrate the giving of the Torah, and at the time that we celebrate the giving of God's law, I look to our own government and I ask myself, is this a legitimate government? Is this good and righteous government? Is this government a government that protects the rights of the people, or is this a government that abuses the rights of the people? Is this a government that tyrannizes people? And is this a government that postures against its people to disarm them and to serially soften them up for the slaughter, while simultaneously taking their tax dollars and funneling it to terrorist organizations worldwide? You be the judge. Thoughts to ponder. We are heading into very interesting times. I submit to you that we are heading into times where we are going to see massive social and political upheaval, and times where we are going to see fulfillment of biblical prophecy, and times that we are told will bring in incredible hardship. You know, if you follow this channel for any amount of time, that war, famine, and disease are the ubiquitous experiences throughout human history. The answer, supply-wise, to each of these is beans, bullets, and band-aids. To famine, we store up food. For war, we're prepared to defend ourselves. And for disease, we're prepared to take care of our family's medical needs at home. Over the past few years, we've seen a major shift in people's financial capability to do these things, but we have also seen a shift in what governments deem as their role to dictate to people what they are permitted to have. In times of upheaval, there's no way that I'm even going to consider talking about disarming in any way, shape, or form. And even if there was a law passed, I'm not going to follow it. I'm not going to be burying anything. And I believe that the wisdom of our founders is just as true now as it was back then. You have to be sure that people were telling them in the 1770s, you better be prepared to bury X, Y, and Z. And you know that their response would have been, the time that people are telling you to bury your goods is the time to use them. I'm not going to be burying anything. I'm not going to be entering into any type of negotiations whatsoever, which could possibly result in me losing any more rights. In times of war, famine, and disease, you must be able to defend yourself. You must have solid supplies stored up. And you must have the wisdom and the knowledge and the skill sets to be ready to respond and to care for people in your sphere of influence. That's one of the reasons why, thank God, I've been able to do what I've done over the past 12 years of my life in giving away plenty of information for free on YouTube, but also in training people all over the United States and the world. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. If you'd like to train with me, you have a couple of opportunities to do that. If you want to train in an online format, I have a link down below to my course. It's 4 hours, it's $129, and you can find that, of course, as we said. Also, if you're interested in training with me in person to get yourself better prepared for these times, you can definitely do that also. I've got a full schedule available on the website, thepatriotnurse.com, and I hope you'll check that out. Guys, in uncertain times and in times where you have illegitimate dictates from, I submit to you, an illegitimate government, it pays to be prepared that much more. Chag Sameach and happy Shavuot and Pentecost to those of you who observe, and I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.